for most countries, for most of the time, trade was about allowing the sovereign to accumulate gold. So they wanted to export more, because when you export, they're paying you back in gold. And when you import, you have to pay them in gold. So if you export more than you import, your pile of gold starts to rise, and you could use that gold to hire mercenaries or make armies and collect more territory. So the way that the wealth of nations spread was you run a trade surplus, you get gold, you use that gold to either defend or expand your nation. That was the way it was for a long, long, long time. And then when the Industrial Revolution came along, trade started having a very different implication. So the key to national power, military power, was industry. So, and we first saw this with Britain. Britain, a relatively small island, at one point ruled basically large parts of the world, including countries like China and India. And the reason they could do that is because they had this very efficient industry that produced arms and also was an attractive, an attractive source of buying things that people wanted to buy manufactured goods. So that was when it sort of switched to, from at this point, what people were looking for with trade was markets, and the markets were intended to lead to industrialization, and industrialization was the source of national wealth. Now, England, around 1840, decided that they were going to go for free trade because we're highly competitive in the export market, and they wanted to open up free trade basically so they could get wheat, especially from the United States, for cheaper, which would allow the real wages of the workers to rise. And so they did this first experiment in the mid-1800s of liberalizing trade. Now, since at that moment, Britain was just booming, but Britain was like China now, their industries going up, their powers going up, everybody wanted to be like England, and they were the leading country. So a lot of countries emulated that liberalization and tried it out. So it went on to the continent. The US tried it out for a little while. And that was when we got off the pure mercantilism. So all that, though, we slipped back in the 1930s into a lot of protectionism. But after the very bad experience in interwar period with the Great Depression and protection, after the war, there was a spirit of like, if we all remove the barriers, we'll all export more, we'll all industrialize more, we'll all grow faster. And so we moved off of this mercantilist view where exports are bad and exports are good and imports are bad, to let's all open up our markets and we'll all grow faster. So that switch really came after the war. And it was very obvious in, for example, the trade between the US and Canada and autos, removed the restrictions, and it was good for the industries on both sides of the border. In Europe, and formation of the European Economic Community from 1958 on, as they lowered barriers between each other, they started booming. Their trade grew faster than output, than incomes. Industry grew even faster than income. So they found that by lowering barriers, they were industrializing by sort of sharing markets. So that was the big switch off of mercantilism.